And welcome to this week's weekly devotion. I'm Pastor Rich here at St. Joseph's in Boyertown. And so we are, today is the 11th, and we are officially now 2 weeks from Christmas. And I have, I'm one of those that Danielle and I are those that we have all the shopping done, all the gifts are wrapped, and um, there might be a few details still to do, baking cookies or whatever. But we're at that place now where we're waiting, right? And you might be in that place too, where you're just waiting now for the next 2 weeks. And it may be you have things planned, party or visiting with family planned over the next 2 weeks, and you're looking forward to that. But this is a time, Advent is a time that is marked by the call to wait and be patient, and that can be hard sometimes, and especially when it's patience through difficulty or patience through suffering. It's one thing to wait for, Christmas, but it's a whole other thing, I think, when you're waiting on the results from a doctor, or you're waiting for um, uh, uh, the problems to resolve themselves and give you direction, or you're waiting on a situation that you're living through and enduring through. You're waiting for it to start to make sense about the direction you're going with your life. Or maybe it's a relationship issue that you're waiting and hoping and praying for something to change, and something to open up, the softening of the heart, that sort of thing. You name it. Waiting is a part of life, and Advent is a time when we draw attention to the waiting, and we recognize how valuable patience is to our Christian faith. So I'm going to read here. This week is from the book of James, the Epistle of James, and it's chapter 5. And chapter 5 is in the end of James's letter, and so he's kind of wrapping things up and summarizing what he's already spoken about. And what he says here is about patience, and being patient and waiting for the Lord. So this is chapter 5. I'm going to read verses 7 through 10 here. He says, "Be patient, therefore, brothers and sisters, until the coming of the Lord. The farmer waits for the precious crop from the earth, being patient with it until it receives the early and the late rains. You also must be patient. Strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near. Brothers and sisters, do not grumble against one another, so that you may not be judged. See, the judge is standing at the doors. As an example of suffering and patience, brothers and sisters, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord." Now, I think there's a valuable lesson here that James is giving us about about patience. Patience, waiting. He says, strengthen your hearts. In verse 8, strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near. That is suggesting to us the coming of the Lord is near, suggesting to us that while we're being patient, we're actually sort of it's not idle. It's not sort of sitting idle by. It's not a kind of waiting that has no hope or expectation. It's a kind of waiting that's expectant on the coming of the Lord that's near, to give purpose to what you're enduring, to give purpose to maybe the suffering, or maybe the situation that you're living through, and to provide that opportunity that God comes back and provides that situation of change. And he gives a couple of examples here. The one real powerful example James gives is that example of farming. A farmer goes out and he plants his crops. He waters it. He takes care of the soil. He puts the seed in the ground. Then he takes care of it. The farmer's never sitting idle by, just sort of, waiting without any sort of expectation. It's not a kind of It's not a do-nothing time, this waiting, right? It's a different kind of waiting. It's a waiting with expectation that God is going to do something. And sure enough, um, in time, right, the first little shoots come up out of the ground. And the farmer was waiting, always waiting, and working with the soil and fertilizing and caring for the circumstances, but all the while never sort of digging down and trying to crack open the seed and force something to happen, right? And so that kind of waiting is what James is talking about. So it's a great example, all right? Waiting with an expectation that God's growth, right? God is going to bring the fullness of the seed out. We can't, so we have to wait for it, right? And that's the patience piece. The other piece, the other example he gives is of the prophets. Right? See the as an example of suffering and patience. He says, brothers and sisters, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Now, what he's pointing to is that the prophets spoke of things that were coming to pass in the future, and the prophetic words gave purpose to a lot of the suffering that Israel endured through. But they had to live through it and then find that purpose later. And sometimes there was hundreds of years even. I think about the Nativity story, for instance, where the prophet Isaiah prophesied about this for maybe 500 years before Mary and Joseph entered Jerusalem. And this seed now that was planted by Isaiah in his prophecy, now finally coming and showing growth. But the conditions had to be just right. There had to be a noble servant named Joseph from the house of David. There had to be a willing virgin mother named Mary. And there had to be the circumstances of Elizabeth and Zechariah, who would bear John the Baptist. And there had to be a situation like there was with King Herod and the census from Caesar and all of those circumstances coming together just at the right time, all the circumstances to bring forth then our Lord through the Virgin Mary and through Joseph. And so, looking to the prophets is another example of a time in which people were called upon to wait for what the Lord was going to do with this period of time. And so I think that's a valuable lesson for us. If we're waiting through a kind of suffering, maybe you're waiting because you have a kind of something going wrong with your body, and there's a diagnosis, or you're waiting for a doctor, or you're waiting for a cure to come to pass, or you're waiting for treatments to take effect, or your body's healing very slowly. This gives us says, strengthen your hearts, right? God is working. God is near. The Lord is near, and God is going to make sense of this. And same way true for like relationships and so forth. Sometimes we wait for the right moment when the softening of the heart allows for forgiveness to take place and reconciliation to be possible. And earlier than that, it's not possible because we're still too raw. We have to wait through that and endure for the. All right, so we had a little blink there when my Wi-Fi went down, the internet went out. So I think we're back on here. And so I want to wrap this up here, okay? Earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread.